Well, the U.S. Senate unanimously approved legislation yesterday clearing the way for families of 9/11 victims to sue the government of Saudi Arabia, despite the kingdom's threat to pull billions of dollars from the U.S. economy if this bill becomes law. And the Obama administration says it would veto the measure.
We have expressed it's difficult to imagine the president signing this legislation.
Let's talk about it with James Kreindler. He is co-counsel for 9/11 families and victims. So you're representing the people who lost loved ones in the 9/11 attacks.
Yes. With
the idea of doing what?
Well, with the idea of being able to get into discovery and prove the case against Saudi Arabia. The ultimate goal is to get fair compensation from the Saudis for their role in working with al-Qaeda, planning an attack on the United States.
This gets to the 28 pages of classified material. You were on 60 Minutes talking about that material that has
Yes.
not yet been declassified. The theory being is that some high-level Saudi government officials had advanced knowledge that 9/11 was going to take place.
Yeah. There's no question Saudi officials were involved. There are at least 5 Saudi officials, members of the Saudi embassy and intelligence operatives who are working with the hijackers, getting them apartments, flying lessons, giving them money, meeting with them, enabling them to meld into society so a year later they could get on the planes and hijack the planes. Now, they're playing kind of a word game. The commission said there's no evidence that high-level officials were involved. Well, rarely does the president of a country go into foreign country with arms and do it himself. They're low-level officials, but the Saudi government is responsible for their actions.
Well, the Saudis have said if this bill passes, they're going to pull $750 billion of their investments out of the U.S. economy. To that, you say what?
Well, it's a silly lie that they said when we started the case 14 years ago. They're never going to pull out their money. It would hurt them much more than us. But they're doing everything they can to stop JASTA from being law because they don't want to face the facts and the evidence that will show Americans and the world what they did.
Well, the U.S. Senate approved this thing unanimously, which is astounding.
Yes.
But the president does not necessarily seem to be on board. Here is his spokesman, Josh Earnest, just yesterday.
This legislation would change long-standing international law regarding sovereign immunity. And the President of the United States continues to harbor serious concerns that this legislation would make the United States vulnerable in other court systems around the world.
So it's kind of interesting because Josh Earnest used to say that $750 billion threat from the Saudis was reason not to let this become law. Now he's saying that it would potentially cause problems for American diplomats and other foreign service personnel?
It's absolute nonsense. Look, they're trying one fable after another. They made it up. For 40 years, there's been exceptions to sovereign immunity, and you haven't seen any other country enact laws in response to those exceptions. The truth of the matter is the Obama administration, unfortunately, is doing everything it can to protect Saudi Arabia and protect Saudi Arabia from dealing with the facts. There is absolutely no merit at all to the statement that there would be an impact on diplomacy. And the notion that 3,000 murdered Americans, that their families should get nothing and the Saudis should get a free ride because some cockamamie suit could be started in Kazakhstan in the future is pretty insulting.
Well, and the language of this bill specifically talks about involvement in terrorist attacks. This doesn't say that you can sue foreign governments willy-nilly.
Correct. And it excludes all acts of war, drones, and everything else. And fortunately, the United States government doesn't work with terror organizations planning to murder thousands of people.
Well, I know you've got senators as disparate as Chuck Schumer and John Cornyn and Ted Cruz and Al Franken on board. So it looks pretty good in the Senate. We'll see, obviously, about the House and what the president ultimately decides. Jim Kreindler. Jim, thank you.